And thank you, Tim, and good evening, everyone. It is my real pleasure to welcome you all to this thank you webinar. And I am very pleased to see the number of participants who have just joined. But before we start our proceedings and we begin, please allow me to invite Deacon Duncan, our regional port chaplain in Aberdeen, to lead us into prayer. Doug, please.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. In the name of the Father, who's compassionate and healing God, help us to see your face in the faces of our brothers and sisters in the seafaring and fishing industry. Guide us as supporters of their needs to reach out with hearts of compassion and hands which serve their needs. When they are anxious, help us to know how to reassure them. When they feel alone, help us to notice and be present. When they feel confused, help us to listen and assist in finding answers to their concerns. And when they need comfort, help us to communicate care and understanding. When they are weak or discouraged, help us find ways to refresh their spirits. And when doubt or darkness touches them, give your light to guide them and lift them up. We thank you, Lord, for this opportunity for our Stella Maris supporters to be one body in serving the seafarers, to all those who offer their time and talents in the variety of ways necessary to meet the seafarers' needs, be it practical, spiritual, financial, or in any other way that they may see fit. Unite us all to yourself in a bond of love and keep us faithful in all that is true. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Doug. And again, thank you all for attending this evening event. I am so happy that numbers are still increasing. But most importantly, thank you for the fantastic support that you provide to Stella Maris. Delivering our mission would be impossible without this valuable support. It is just a year ago that Tim Hill joined Stella Maris as National Director and Chief Executive Officer. It has been, I'm sure, an incredible year for Tim and also for Stella Maris in terms of amount of work done. This is reflected in our 2023 annual review document, and I look forward to hearing an update from Tim about this review. This update will be followed by a view from the front line by Charles Stewart, our regional port chaplain in Southampton, who will share his experiences in dealing day in, day out with seafarers arriving to his ports. As our chaplains frequently deal with cases of modern slavery every year, Stella Maris is campaigning to eradicate inequality, injustice, exploitation, and abuse in the maritime and fishing industries. Our CEO team, together with Father Paulo, joining from the Philippines, will update us on the initiatives taken by Stella Maris to eradicate modern slavery at sea. We will also hear an update by Deacon Nick O'Neill, our Senior Area Port Chaplain for South of England and Wales, on the positive impact that our Centenary Emergency Fund has. This fund is used to support seafarers and fishers and their families around the globe in cases of extreme difficulty, such as abandonment, accidents, medical support, piracy, and other crises that the people of the sea face when they are away from home. Looking ahead, the Stella Maris community is our focus for 2024, and our Director of Development, Adrian Gannon, will refer to our future plans. I hope that all these presentations will give you a good insight on how Stella Maris provides important everyday care for seafarers, fishers, and their families in ports in the UK and around the globe. Once more, thank you for everything you do for Stella Maris in your different capacities. Nothing at Stella Maris could happen without the commitment and faithful help of people like you. I wish you enjoy a very good evening, and I will pass to Tim to proceed with the program as introduced to you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you, Esteban, and good evening, everybody, and welcome again. Some of you will have heard of the very sad passing of John Pinhay, who was our long-serving chaplain down in Falmouth. So before I begin my part of my presentation, I would like to invite Anne Donnelly in Falmouth. John was in Plymouth, to say a few words in memory. So over to you, Anne.
Yes, thank you, Tim. I was very privileged to be able to work with John. He was my next door neighbour in Cornwall whilst I was in Devon. And he always was a very compassionate, caring man. And he put seafarers first. And he'd been ship visiting and a chaplain for a long time. And he and his wife, Pat, and his family used to be involved in looking after seafarers and the parish as well. And he will be sorely missed. A very kind, a real gentleman in every sense of the word. We offer our condolences to Pat, and there'll be a few of us there at his funeral next week. But a great loss to Stella Maris, but an absolutely great example of how a chaplain functions and leads their life, really. So I'd just like to say, eternal rest give unto him, O Lord, and may he rest in peace. Amen.
So thank you, Anne. So it's over to me. I'm almost a year into the job, a year on Saturday, and what a wonderful job it is, and it has exceeded all my expectations. So the title of this webinar is a thank you webinar. So I'm going to say my thank yous up front rather than save them to the end. Of course, who do I thank in what particular order is particularly difficult. So this is in no particular order. But first of all, I would like to thank our trustees, Esteban and John Hood, who I believe are online, and Teresa and Louisa, William, James, and James, and Maita, and all the others. There are so many to mention. I must say that they have been a fantastic support to me. It's been a very interesting and new year to me in terms of my transition from a career in the army to charity, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart for everything they've done to support me, to put up with my endless questions, and of course some of my obvious failings as well. But it's been a real learning journey, and I thank Esteban and his team for looking after me, but more importantly, looking after the charity. I'd also like to thank our chaplains. Wherever I go, it is the best part of my job is visiting the chaplains and seeing what they do, hearing about what they do, but also being a part of what they do when they invite me to come and do their ship visiting, and I get to see them in action. I'd also like to thank our support staff who work tirelessly behind the scenes, whether that's fundraising, whether it's communications, human resources, administration, you name it. They are the sort of background in support to our wonderful charity. I'd also like to thank and welcome many of our international friends and colleagues. I believe that Benoit from France is online, Father Finbar, and Rose from Ireland. A lot of the chaplains that we support worldwide are in many time zones away. And of course, I should really say thank you all for turning up at 7:30 p.m. on a Tuesday evening after a long, busy day. And that's tribute to yourselves. I'd also like to thank my fellow maritime charity shipmates. I know that we've got Sharon Coveney from the Merchant Navy Welfare Board online, and also John Wilson from the Liverpool Seafarers Centre. And there are so many other charities that we work hand in glove with. I'd also like to thank our volunteer ship visitors. I've had much pleasure in meeting so many of you in Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Northeast, the South Coast and Wales, throughout the British Isles, to be honest. I'm not going to name them all because I have met so many. And it is you providing that fantastic support to our 20 chaplains that we currently have, soon to be 22, I hope. Knitters. When I was researching this job and I looked at the website and saw knitters, I thought to myself, I'm not sure what all that's about. I know that every soldier from my previous job, every sailor, every seafarer, every fisher loves a hat. But it is more than just the physical hat they get, or the Easter eggs at Easter and the Christmas gifts. It is really, and it dawned on me after a few weeks in the job, that it's all about the expression of love and gratitude from the people of Britain. The first person they see, maybe coming up that gangway when they've just come alongside, is that Stella Maris chaplain or volunteer ship visitor, handing over that expression, that thanks for the work that they do to support this island nation. I'd also like to thank our parish contacts. Without you, we are heavily reliant on you spreading the word about what Stella Maris does. Not just what the charity does, but more importantly, what it is that seafarers and fishers do to support this island nation of us. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, it is the wider Stella Maris family, of which you are all a part of, the many donors who support the charity, because it is without your kind acts of kindness and donations that we're just unable to carry on with our work. So what do I want to talk about? Well, I want to talk about a few things, but effectively, I'm going to give my reflections on my first year, just a few. I want to talk about some of the important work that we've undertaken throughout the year. I'd like to talk about advocacy and modern slavery. We're going to talk about CEF, our Centenary Emergency Fund, but that's with Nick. I also want to talk about future plans, and that's with Adrian. But before I go into that detail, I would like to just look at the annual review in pictures. So, Sarah, over to you.
I'm Geraldo from Philippines, a fisherman, worker for almost, let's say, 13 years here in Northern Ireland. I am happy working as a fisherman, but last year there is something really happened, not good to my health. I was suffering, the terrible stomach pain. The ambulance picked me up and they bring me to hospital. They found out that I had a colon cancer. I thought they're going to admit me to the hospital. They give me a bed or what, but they sent me home. So I don't have, let's say, home. I don't have a place. So that's why I asked help from Stella Maris, from Deacon Joe, and then with his some colleagues. Without Stella help, I'm already dead. Everything what I need here in my plot, and then from my food, from my electric, and then everything is provided by Stella Maris, Deacon Joe. He support me. They support me. Stella Maris support me all the way down until now. That's why I am very thankful that I have Deacon Joe, Stella Maris in my life. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I thought I'd just share some very quick reflections on my first year in the job after leaving the army after 36 years. So of course I'm very new to working in the charity sector, and as I mentioned, I think in my first week when we did the thank you webinar last year, how blessed I feel that this job combines my passion for looking after people, but also with a slight sort of nautical maritime twist. I would always wanted to be a sailor. So my first sort of reflection was how reliant seafarers and fishers are on maritime charities for their welfare support. And that surprised me because my previous job in the army, we were good at looking after our soldiers and our people. Veterans is a separate subject, but the government's getting better at that. And I thought maybe the maritime industry should really be taking care of its people more so than they currently do. I know that there are steps to improve, and as part of our advocacy work, we are constantly telling maritime industry that they need to do more to support and nurture their people being their most important asset. And if they can't, or if they are find it difficult to, then they can at least support the maritime charities that provide that welfare support. The second observational reflection I have is just how many maritime charities there are. And there are, I would almost say, hundreds in different shape and sizes. There are clearly a key number of players. I'd probably count, a dozen that we engage with on almost a daily routine basis. And together, when we work collaboratively together, that's when we're strongest, and that's when we achieve the best effect. I do hear industry sometimes complain that there are too many, and who should they be speaking to? But I would question that by saying there's never enough charities to go around, and actually each charity has its own individual identity, its own strengths, its weaknesses, and its passions that enable it to carry out its job so well. So I would counter that particular argument. The next one is just how fantastic the Stella Maris Global Family Network really is. And through our routine communications, our routine engagements, whether that be telephone, email, or web chat with chaplains across the world, I think we're able to provide that continuity of welfare provision across the globe. So what does that mean? Well, that means a Filipino seafarer who raises an issue with, let's say, Doug in Aberdeen. Doug is able to then reach back to the chaplain, Father John or Father Paolo, or one of their chaplains in the Philippines, to be able to link in, to visit the family, to check on them, to make sure that they're okay, so that we're able to provide that global connectivity. And then the last one is, it's about being a charity, and it's also about our religion. And I think that we've got here what I would call a double whammy, which is a good thing, by the way. First of all, people want to work in a charity. It's more than a job, it's a vocation, it's a commitment, and it's a commitment, selfless commitment to working for people. So that's a force multiplier. And then the second one is being a Roman Catholic. I think the Roman Catholic, being a part of the Roman Catholic and a Roman Catholic charity, but of course we support all religions, it provides us the spiritual glue and the identity that is also what I would determine at my old speak, a battle-winning factor. So those are the principal reflections. I have many reflections, but those are the key ones that I've picked up on. Now, what I want to do is talk about a little about last year and what we've done. Now, as everybody knows, our principal mission is to provide practical, pastoral, spiritual support, which Deacon Doug mentioned in his opening prayer, and that's to seafarers, fishers, and their families. But let's talk about, or let's hear from the front line, if I was to use old army speak, or more importantly, from the dockside or from the harbour wall, one of our chaplains, Charles Stewart, from the South Coast. Over to you, Sarah.
I'm Charles Stewart, one of the port chaplains on the South Coast. Our main ports are Southampton and Fawley. I'd like to tell you a little bit about some aspects of our work. The first concerns an accident at sea on Christmas Eve involving Ray, a Filipino able seaman serving in a small bulk carrier heading west in the English Channel in heavy weather. He'd just finished cooking some Christmas puddings, looking forward to some celebrations at sea the next day, when he was sent forward to the forecastle with another AB to make safe some equipment. A heavy wave broke over the bow and swept Ray along the deck. Luckily, his foot caught something which prevented him from being washed overboard, but he was concussed and badly injured. He had broken some vertebrae and ribs, badly wrenched his shoulder and injured his hip. He had to be medevaced off the ship in mid-channel and was flown to Portsmouth. Subsequently, his shipping company contacted me and asked if I could visit Ray in hospital. He was in agony, a stranger in a foreign hospital. He could hardly breathe. His only clothes had been cut off him in the helicopter. We got to know each other very quickly. I set about reassuring him that he now had a friend who would see him through everything, and over the next few days set about boosting his morale by looking after his basic needs, clothes, flip-flops, personal effects, and regular visits. I made sure he was always in touch with his wife and family back home in the Philippines. It was eye-watering to see the agony when the nursing staff had to move him. We thought his shipmates must be worrying about him, so we got in touch with our Stella Maris colleagues in France, who arranged a ship visit to reassure the crew that he was on the mend and being cared for. He remained cheerful, but confided that his recovery was hindered. No rice. But a great team of Filipino nurses on his ward joined together to bring food from their homes, so he got his rice and the recovery began. Our Stella Maris volunteers joined in with visits and spiritual support. In time, Ray was kitted out with winter clothes, ready to start a painful journey home. His shipping company were marvellous, arranging a special taxi, Heathrow wheelchair, business travel, an ambulance and private hospital in Manila for further tests and treatment, where he would be supported by his family. We keep in touch as he continues his slow recovery at home, hoping to get back to sea sometime. His medical care is funded and he remains on basic pay. It was wonderful that Stella Maris had all the resources to respond quickly and bring on-the-spot relief in such a distressing situation. We were able to work closely with the shipping company and hospital staff to ease Ray's hospital time. Should it be needed, our reach stretches around the globe to where it's needed to support families in difficulty. Changing the subject now, we have been working with Ukrainian seafarers and witnessing their distress as the Russian invasion of the country continues. We find that many have moved their families to safe countries, but we hear of older family members reluctant to seek safety, homes destroyed, endless uncertainty and worry. Hardened seafarers still walk away from a conversation with glistening eyes, and we know when to lighten the conversation. But we also know that a friendly face and a discreet, listening ear can bring relief. Russians and Ukrainians serve together in ships. They put the war to one side and work professionally, happily. The latest challenge they face is a new rule which prevents them from renewing passports and professional certificates in an embassy abroad, so they must return in person to the Ukraine to renew them. They fear conscription. One young officer with a family in Bulgaria tells me he is a sailor, not a soldier. Lastly, I'd like to say a little bit about our work with cruise ships. It's a pleasure to visit P&O and Cunard ships on a regular basis. We get to know the crew over time and understand the highs and lows and pressures they experience. young men and women away from home and family for up to 9 months at a time. With our volunteers, we offer them a link with the outside world, a friendly chat, and a good supply of SIM cards, rosaries, Bibles, bottles of holy water, miraculous medals, so everyone can fortify themselves spiritually for time at sea. One of our special tasks in Southampton is to ensure that every P&O ship has a Catholic priest to celebrate the Easter and Christmas liturgies for all on board, but they are there especially for the crew. They have the opportunity to receive the sacraments, talk to a priest, and attend Mass, even if it's at 11:30 at night when they have finally finished work for the day. Our priests come from many countries. They work their socks off, but all say what a hugely rewarding ministry this is for them, and the thousands of seafarers they minister to greatly appreciate an opportunity to celebrate the great Christian feasts of Easter and Christmas. Well, that's all for now, and thank you for your time.
So thank you, Charles. Unfortunately, Charles can't join us tonight because Charles is away on holiday, long-planned holiday. But I think you'll all agree that that was a wonderful video. But I would say that what Charles and Gregory and the whole of the South Coast team do is reflected across the whole of the nation. And it's not unique. Those stories are very similar, told in the northeast and Scotland and Northern Ireland, all the way down through to Wales. But Charles put it together beautifully, I think. So to the meat of my presentation, and there's so much to talk about, and hopefully you've all received the wonderful annual review, which is here, which is, again, I think it's a lovely documentation, documenting the great work that we've done and that what you have done and what you have supported throughout the year. So if you haven't received a copy of one of those, do make sure that you get in touch, and we'll send you one, or we'll send you as many as you like. If you like to give them out to your friends or into your churches, then please just ask, and we will post them down to you. So I'm only going to highlight a few key areas. First of all, I'd like to pick up on a point that Charles mentioned, and that was support to Ukraine. Ukraine and Father Alex and Rostik in the team in Odessa, in Stella Maris, are very dear and very close to our hearts. We meet with them virtually every week on a Wednesday, where we just come together to hear about their problems, about their issues. But one thing that particularly struck me was said by Father Alex. He said it's the power of prayer. He said it's knowing and the comfort and the knowledge that there are people throughout the world that are praying for him and his team, and for seafarers and fishers and their families, and for the people of Ukraine, that gives them the strength to be able to continue what they do so well. And so that particular point resonated on me. But what practical things have we done? Well, through the help of the UK P&I Club, we have provided them with a welfare van, which they're able to use to deliver their ministry. We've also provided them with their annual operating budget, which effectively pays their wages and pays the fuel and light. And we meet, as I mentioned, we meet weekly to hear their updates and to continue to provide support. So I think supporting Ukraine in this particularly difficult time, as we're soon to enter in a third year of conflict, is ever so important. Advocacy. We do a lot for advocacy, and at first it took me a while to get my head around what advocacy meant and what it particularly meant to Stella Maris. And there are so many cases that we advocate, or we are the voice of the seafarer or the fisher, whether that be supporting cases of abandonment, or supporting to seafarers and fishers who are being exploited, whether that be not being properly paid, or low wages, or being overworked, or lack of food on board, or being restricted their access to shore leave. So we made, whether that's at a local chaplain level, going to see the master and say, hey, listen, there's no reason, Brexit is not a reason why your seafarers can't come ashore to go and get some time off if they can get some time off. But maybe at the higher level, we provide some high-level engagement with industry, with government, and other partners who maybe to try and affect some sort of change. Provision of training. We recently provided training to fishers in Northern Ireland, whether that be sort of indigenous local fishers in Kilkeel and Portavogie, but also to the 44 migrant fishers who are based there. But that training is extended worldwide to include pre-deployment training for fishers in the Philippines, and with a joint project with ourselves, the Seafarers charity, and Waitrose, they were able to produce some pre-departure videos to educate and inform fishers who may be coming to work here. And as part of that ongoing work, Stella Maris, we're in the process of providing some leaflets to continue with that education and training. On the international development front, it's all about capacity building, and it's helping other countries, other nations, other bishop promoters in those countries set up and establish Stella Maris organizations. And that's through provision of governance advice, assurance advice, but also training, initial resources to enable the purchase of protective personal equipment, and also other training material. And I think our recent efforts have been in the Republic of South Africa, Tanzania, Namibia, and Kenya. And we're always looking at other areas that we can continue to support. But of course, it's not just about capacity building, but it's support to our international partners, Stella Maris partners, whether that be the provision of funds for conferences or for training activity. And so, for example, I've recently returned from Taiwan, my first proper international visit, thank you, Esteban, to visit the Taiwan Stella Maris International Conference on Fishers' Welfare, where we supported that with a grant to enable participation from across the region. But of course, they were very interested to hear about what work we were doing in Stella Maris UK to support international seafarers and international fishers. Modern slavery. A reflection on modern slavery was I didn't quite understand, and I'd like to think that I'm reasonably up to speed on current affairs. I read the newspaper, I watch the news, but the scale of the problem of modern slavery in the United Kingdom, with 180,000 people estimated to be trapped in modern slavery or some form of domestic servitude. And the problem is not just confined to the healthcare sector or to the farming sector, but of course also within the maritime and particularly the fishing sector. And we in Stella Maris have had plenty of recent example of the support we've had to provide, whether that be Anne Donnelly down in Plymouth, or Nick O'Neill and his team in Shoreham, Southampton and Portsmouth, to the support provided by Steve Willows supporting fishers who've entered into the National Referral Mechanism, to Joe O'Donnell in Troon and across the Northern Ireland. It is widespread and it is surprising. So as a result of that, what we've done last year is we've set up a series of identification and awareness workshops, 6 of them throughout the country, starting off in Liverpool, then across to Glasgow, Belfast, Hull, Portsmouth, and then finally Bristol. And then the intention of that was to bring together various stakeholders from across the port environment, whether they be maritime industry, port officials, port workers, the police, intelligence agencies, and of course other charities, including ourselves, to bring them together to try and identify what are the signs of modern slavery and how we can better prepare ourselves. And as a result of those workshops, we took that forward into working groups, or 2 steering groups, sorry, which looked specifically at some of those issues that were a common theme raised in those workshops. And as a result, we're now going to take that even further. We have an aspiration to form a national maritime anti-slavery work group where we can further develop those themes, but more importantly, produce something that is tangible, whether it be training resources and training material to be able to train those people within the port environment, including maritime charities, to providing checklists so that we can identify what it is we're required to do if we immediately come upon a situation. Because at the moment, lots of well-intentioned folk doing really important stuff, but it's not joined up. And of course, the police scratching their head. What do we do with these people? Well, hand them over to a maritime charity. And then a maritime charity like Seafarers, well, we can't look after them forever. But of course, there's another charity, a modern slavery charity that can provide that provision. It's linking everybody together, joining all the dots, and coming up with a coherent action plan so that we can support people. But of course, it's not just about supporting victims. We need to look at how we can prevent it. And I think one of the key things through prevention is seeking and obtaining some form of conviction. We're currently supporting 4 seafarers in Belfast. The case is currently being investigated by the PSNI. Because once we have a conviction and somebody is banged to rights, then we can start to add in the deterrence and the prevention factor. So it's all part of our very important modern slavery work. So that's enough about modern slavery that we're doing here in the UK. I'd like to ask Sarah to play the video that we have from Father Paulo, who is our regional coordinator in the Philippines and the Far East. So over to you, Sarah, please.
The profile of a fisher is a simple, humble person, high school, sometimes college graduated, having very limited English knowledge, aware that he is getting, in theory, $400 or $500 a month. So that is the profile of a fisher. Now, all this is a quite good combination of factors for somebody who has limited knowledge to sign a contract or to get a job, and then to fall as a victim of, can be human trafficking, it can be slavery, and of course, exploitation and abuse. Given the situation in the Philippines, the number of fishers is not that large. So if you look into government data, that means official data, in 2023, only 7,999 fishers were legally deployed. Now, of course, the question is there, right? Can we double the number? Perhaps yes. So you look into UK, and you will see that I don't think everybody going to UK, they go through the right channel. In what sense? They may apply for A job and they end up in B job. And then everybody's called fisher. Prevention is better than cure, no? And then right now, you guys, when we have a fisher, unfortunately, that is the problem if it comes to us, no? So our idea is how much can we prevent them from the atrocities that we are aware of? At a certain point, we thought of partnering with ILO Manila and in the ship-to-shore ILO's program. So we are expected to come up with 7 modules. Right now, there are 4 ready. Number 1 is called Introduction to Occupational Safety and Health Measures. The second one is Recruitment Red Flags. The third one is Requirements for Recruitment. And the 4th module is What to Expect as a Filipino Migrant Fisher. So this is based on experience, based on the abuses, injustices, etc., that we hear from the fishers, that with ILO, we came up with those 4. So that is our idea, that until the end of the year, we should carry on in a number of places, or better saying, where there is a Stella Maris chaplain or director, we would like to conduct this seminar. This weekend, until this weekend, There will be 2 seminars. We target at 50 fishers to each seminar. Now, if ever this fisher passes it on to another one fisher only, then it's 100. If each one passes it on, then you can multiply the number. So the multiply effect is our hope. This month of May, our target is at least 150. So that is the initial one. But then until the end of the year, at least we look into 500. But not only in NCR or Manila, but we would like to look into the entire Luzon area. The Philippines is divided into 3 big islands, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. We would like to partner with NGOs, with the church-based organizations, of course, government agencies, and all the civil society sectors looking to fishers, to partner with them to empower the local communities so that they themselves, in turn, they will pass it on to the fishers. That's why Stella Maris Manila goes back to the idea that knowledge is power.
So thank you, Father Paolo. And it's probably well past his bedtime, so he can't join us in person. I just want to pick up on one point, Father Paolo, who I had much pleasure in meeting 2 weeks ago in Taiwan at that International Fishers Conference. And we might just think, well, that's Father Paolo, he's on the other side of the world. What's he got to do with us? Well, as I mentioned before, we are one big global Stella Maris family. So we help and share and support each other. But more importantly, it's Filipino fishers who are coming to this country to work on board Scottish, English, Northern Irish fishing vessels. And so we're a part of that training and development and awareness because we receive them. So we need to look after them, but also we need to be able to prepare them. So jointly with ourselves and Father Paolo and his team, we're able to deliver that training. And one thing that did come out of the Taiwan conference, which he invited me to, was I met with the ITF, and so the International Transport Workers Federation rep from Ireland, and that was Michael. And basically, Michael talked about a tragic story of 4 Ghanaian fishers who came in on a UK transit visa, but as soon as they landed in the UK, they went straight across the southern side of the border into the Republic of Ireland, where they then were working on a fishing vessel, and they were effectively trapped in sort of modern slavery. Tragically, the boat sank, but they were all rescued, and those 4 fishers are now being supported by the ITF. And most recently, of last week, Stella Maris is providing a Centenary Emergency Fund grant to support them whilst they are living in a safe house, whilst they're being accommodated, and whilst they try and seek justice. And that's a nice example of ourselves, Stella Maris, working with the ITF in another country to support fishers who support both our nations in a vital fishery. So I hope that gives me a nice link to introduce Deacon Nick O'Neill, who's going to talk a little bit more about our CEF fund. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening, everyone. The Centenary Emergency Fund, also known as the CEF or CEF, was set up as part of our 100-year celebrations, activities and initiatives. It was a lump sum of money that was made available for Stella Maris chaplains around the world to help any seafarer or fisher that was struggling, having difficulties, or suffering some type of hardship. The idea was that if we were approached by such a seafarer or fisher, that we could give them a grant from this fund that would help stabilize the situation or help the family back home, but enable that individual family to return to some sense of normality. It's to provide some short relief, some temporary support that helps the seafarer or the fisherman to go back to sea, or enables the family back home to move on with their lives from that particular situation. Seafarers and fishermen will generally only approach us when things are so difficult and they feel that they can't cope or face this on their own anymore. We get a wide range of seafarers and situations that might be causing great distress and anxiety, and I'm briefly just going to share a few of those I've been involved with. We had a UK seafarer who had completed all of his training at a maritime academy and was just finishing at the time that COVID hit. This stopped him from getting his sea hours experience because of the virus. This caused him some financial hardship over the next couple of years. But when he was able to start looking at this once again, his tickets had expired and he needed to get a new medical examination in place. He was able to find a volunteer position on a ship that would lead to permanent work if he could get the paperwork arranged. We helped with a grant and he now has full-time employment at sea. Another case involved the ex-wife and son of a UK-based fisherman. They'd moved into a rented property. The son, who was 10 years old and had been diagnosed with autism, loved being outside, especially in the garden. The side of the house wasn't secure and didn't have a gate fitted. And one day, while the boy was in the garden, a stranger had wandered in to the backyard. Fortunately, nothing happened, but of course it caused great distress for the young boy and his mother. The young boy was caused a great emotional trauma and didn't want to leave the house again. A small grant from Stella Maris made sure that a gate was fitted, and this has now brought some great relief to the both of them, and of course helped the young boy regain some confidence to go outside again, along with receiving some therapy from one of our sister maritime charities. And then the last case I'd like to mention involves our chaplain in Tilbury, Wojciech, who met a Filipino seafarer on a routine visit. The seafarer mentioned in a conversation that his brother was a fisherman back in the Philippines, but that he had tragically died while working, leaving behind a wife and 5 children. Wojciech completed one of the SEF applications and a grant was awarded to help the family with general living expenses, but also a little bit extra to help them set up a small business of selling locally caught fish in their local community. This grant was then paid to one of our chaplains in the Philippines, and the money was taken personally to the family, which shows the strength of our Stella Maris family network. The great benefit of the Centenary Emergency Fund is that for us as a charity, the relatively small amounts of money that are given out as grants make an absolutely huge and incredible positive impact on those we are helping. And from those examples I've mentioned, especially the family in the Philippines, is that we are more than simply a phone number or an email address or an ATM. We're more than a person behind a screen. We are providing some financial support, but we are truly and physically present to the seafarers, to the fishers, and to their families. We have that personal and special relationship. Those that we support know that we are there when they need us. We are the servants, we are the hands, we are the feet and the face of Christ to the people of the sea and their loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Deacon Nick. That was beautifully put. I just want to make one observation again about this wonderful charity, and it has a super loose definition of what it means by seafarer. As you know, we support seafarers, fishers, and their families. And when I questioned somebody in maritime industry about seafarers, said unless they've got a seafaring contract, they're not a seafarer. I said, well, does that include offshore wind workers? Does it include dock workers? Nope, not at all. But what I like about Stella Maris is we'll support anybody who is involved in the maritime industry, whether that's a seafarer, whether it's a master of a ship, or whether it's an able seaman, whether it's a skipper or a fisherman, international, regardless of race, religion, or creed. But it could also be the lady who works behind the counter in the port canteen, or it could be the security guard on the gate, manning the CCTV. And I think Nick's examples there of 2 examples in the UK and internationally gave a really good flavour for some of the support that we're supposed to provide. And I know that Kathy has just answered a question or asked a question, and I'll answer that in a moment regarding SEF. So we're almost done. Future plans. Well, if you've read the annual review, you'll see that we've had an extraordinarily successful financial year. Nothing to do with me, I hasten to add, but it's all to do with the fantastic standing that people hold Stella Maris in. But of course, it goes also the fantastic job done by our fundraising communications team. We've had a significant number of legacies, people wishing to give us money and leave us money in their will. We've also had the Seamen's Friendly Society of St. Paul's, who used to provide residence and home care to seafarers, but because the charity trustees are the monks down at Bolton Abbey, who are Protestant, Anglican, Benedictine order, so not Catholic, because they like the work that we do, they want to wind up their charity and provide us with a grant so that we can then continue their legacy by establishing seafarer centres, first of all down in Southampton, and then maybe a few others throughout the country. And of course, the Aberdeen Seafarer Centre, they want to close down and wind up their charity and hand it over as a going concern to Stella Maris. So what does that mean? Well, it's all to do with the fantastic reputation that this charity has built up over the ages and over the years. And I think it's testament to the fantastic job that our chaplains, our support team, our volunteer ship visitors so ably supported in promoting that message throughout the parishes that our parish contacts do. So what plans next year? Well, some of you will be aware that we've put a chaplain into Belfast, Northern Ireland, earlier on this year. Chris Reynolds started on the 1st of January, and his 6-month point is due up on the 1st of June. So well done, Chris, because he's passed. He doesn't know it yet, but don't let the cat out of the bag. And we're also going to put, in the next couple of months, a chaplain into Liverpool and Lancaster and the North East, because that's a significant chunk of the country where we're not currently present. I'm working alongside the Liverpool Seafarer Centre, John Wilson and his team, and the Liverpool Propeller Club, Nautilus Welfare Trust, and also Mission to Seafarers, who I think are looking at a similar. I'll come back to my point. There's never enough chaplains or volunteer ship visitors to go around supporting our many, many beneficiaries. We've got the 20th anniversary of our Holy Pilgrimage to Lindisfarne coming up on the 29th of June. And I look forward to seeing so many of our primarily Northeast based team there to celebrate that wonderful occasion, and also to finally mark the retirement of our longest serving chaplain, Paul Atkinson, who retired at the end of last year. So I look forward to seeing Paul, Peter, and all the many volunteers I've met from that part of the world. We're also looking at how we're going to better recognise and support our people, whether that be chaplains, support team, volunteers, and our parish contacts. How do we support that development? How do we encourage and promote further recruiting, further growth? And how do we recognise? Because everybody likes to be recognised for the work that they do. It's not just that selfless commitment, going home at the end of the day and done a good job. It's telling the story, because that gives us, I think, us all the strength and the will and the inspiration to do better ourselves. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Adrian, who's got a few more important things to talk about in the future. And then it's back to me, say a few thank yous, final thank yous, before we then go into Q&A. So over to you, Adrian.
Thanks, Tim. Yes, so the last hour or so has been looking backwards, and just to say thank you for all the work that you have enabled us to do. And really, I suppose on behalf of the fundraising communications team that I'm in, I just want to say thank you, because we reach out to you during the year for appeals, and you always respond very generously. So thank you for all of that. And hopefully what you've heard over the last hour helps to articulate how we're using your funds throughout the year. But we're also looking forward a little bit, as Tim mentioned. And the next big fundraising thing that's coming up is on the 14th of July, and that is Sea Sunday. Sea Sunday, as many of you will know, is the day when Catholic churches around the UK kindly remember seafarers, fishers, pray for them, pray for our work, and hear an appeal for our work and kindly take a second collection. So if you're a churchgoer and if you would like to be involved in your church's Sunday activities, then please do reach out to us, because it's really helpful for us if we've got people that will ideally read out the appeal from the altar, or ask the priest to do it, encourage the priest to have the second collection. So if you think you could get involved in some way, then please do contact us. You can phone the office or email the office. I'll put the contact details in the chat in a second. But it would be really helpful, because this is a very, very important part of our funding for the year. So that the money we get on Sea Sunday is a big percentage of our annual income. So very important for us. So if you could get involved, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. So I think I've already got about a minute if I'm going to keep to my time. And so finally, I would like to say thank you, everybody, for joining in. I mean this sincerely when I say that we are one big Stella Maris global family. We are genuinely a family of chaplains, volunteers, support team, trustees, donors, all working together to support our beneficiaries, our seafarers, fishers and their family. And I genuinely do believe that we are one team. So what does that mean? Well, it means that I want to hear from you. I want you guys out there to just keep sharing your ideas, your thoughts, your comments, your ideas on where we don't get things right, how we can improve, because it is all about building this organization, this charity, so that we are able to better support our people internally, who I've all mentioned, us all. Also, how do we support our fellow sister maritime charities? And more importantly, I think more fundamentally, how do we deliver a better service to our many beneficiaries? So on behalf of Captain Esterman and the trustees and all the team, I'd like to thank you all for your support. If I'm allowed to give one special shout out, it'll be to Sarah Eustace, who's our fundraising, digital communications, and all of that good stuff wrapped in, for enabling this and putting together that wonderful video set to music, which I thought was particularly powerful and poignant. So Sarah, great job, and marshalling and corralling us all. This has not been a Jackie Weaver a Zoom call, which we all fondly remember from those COVID early days. So that's it. I think I've spoken enough. It's 20:30 exactly. I said it was going to be an hour. We're going to now hand over to questions and answers. So I'm going to read out, I'm not sure if that's a question, but it says, and it's from Sharon Coveney, our Merchant Navy Welfare Board. Sharon, good evening, Mom. Tim, many congratulations to you and your team for a fantastic webinar. Thank you also for the tireless care and support your team provides to seafarers. Having been in your role for a year now, what would you say has been the biggest challenge for Stella Maris? Right, okay. You know what? That's really interesting. That's a really good question, Sharon, and I think that's a tricky one. And if I was going to be really, really honest, and I mean no disrespect for my predecessor or for anybody else in the charity, I think the biggest challenge for me has been bringing Stella Maris into the wider maritime charity family. Of course, we've always been there. But when I visited in those early days, and I'd look charity chiefs in the eye and go, go on and tell me what you honestly think about Stella Maris. And they said, well, you know what, Tim, first of all, you're really good. The charity is really good at what you do, providing that practical pastoral spiritual support. I said, great, good. I like to hear that. Second thing, though, is you can be a little bit Catholic-y. Now, I don't think that's a real word. Because I heard from Bishop Paul, our Bishop Promoter, it's Catholicity. So we can be a bit Catholic-y. Well, okay, fair enough. But it is the spiritual glue that binds us together as a team. So I can sort of live with that. But also they said sometimes you can be a little bit insular and a little bit on your own. And so I think the biggest challenge for me has been just gently reminding people within the charity that it's not a competition, that we are all in this together, supporting our many beneficiaries, and we can share ideas, we can share practice, we can work alongside each other. Now, if the truth be known, at the tactical level, if I can use that old army expression, at the ground level, that coordination, that friendship, that working together, that collaboration works beautifully. And I've seen that, whether that be in Port of Leith, where you've got Mission to Seafarers Scotland and Stella Maris chaplains and ship visitors visiting cruise ship together, working out the roster, whether that be Anne Donnelly and her team in Grimsby working with Reverend Tim, sorting out who's going to do what part of the port, all the way down to what goes on in Aberdeen. And Aberdeen, Joe and Doug and I went to visit Miriam in the Fisherman's Mission up in Peterhead, or activity in Wales. So I think we already have it, but it's just maybe it's at the operational level where we can do better to collaborate together and be seen to be a great charity to work alongside. So Sharon, I hope that answers your question. Good one. Done. Okay, now I did see an earlier question, but it seems to have dropped off my radar, and that was the question about which talked about Seth, which was when Nick O'Neill was talking. And I think the question, and I just saw a glimpse of it because I was concentrating on what Nick was saying. The question is, well, what's the scale of our SEFT grants? And so, for example, we take last year, we awarded 39 grants, and that's not just a singleton people, but sometimes to a group of people, and it's roughly £45,000 a year. I personally think, whilst we budgeted for 45, because the charity is in financially good health at the moment, I suspect that if we made an application to our trustees to breach that current cap of 45, 60, 70, because we had those bids coming in, I don't think we would turn them off. I know clearly if we were ratcheting up into the hundreds of thousands, we might need to be a little bit more careful with the way that we allocate and award grants. But it's roughly 45, and I think we can probably afford to do more. The challenge we've had is encouraging people to apply. Now, internationally, it's tricky. We've simplified the application process and the form, but we do request some due diligence, i.e., we hear about a story of a deserving family in the Philippines, but we need somebody just to double check to make sure that it's a bona fide case. We don't want to be taken for a ride, and just understanding the sheer size and scale of the Philippines. 7,112 islands. It's not easy for Father John or Father Paolo or some of their chaplains and sisters to go out and do that due diligence and that check and then to hand over the money on our behalf. So what I have said to Father Paolo and the team is we'll support them financially, because it's unfair of the diocese, who pays their wages and pays their travel and subsistence, will pay for the ferry ride, or we'll pay for the hotel overnight accommodation to assist them to be able to deliver, that due diligence and the payment on our behalf. And I hope for that offer that we've made, that it will encourage them more to think, there is a deserving case over there. Let's reach out to Stella Maris UK and see if we can attract any funding. So thank you for that earlier question. So are there any more questions? Now I can't see any coming up or any being typed, but I'm going to do something which is rather mental, and I hope it's not going to break the bank. But I'm going to say, if anybody wants to talk or ask a question, then maybe if they just unmute themselves and ask, if that would work, they could just speak straight away.
Can I, Tim, there's a question in the chat which I could answer, if that's okay.
Yeah, yes, please. Yes, from Sheila. Yeah. Yes, please. Adrian, go for it.
Just to say thank you, Sheila. Great question. We will provide, I should have said this actually, So if you are willing to speak in your church, we will provide the script for you. So we are currently finalising our See Sunday resources, which will be sent to all churches in the UK, although some seem to mislay it. So if you want to be involved, we can also send it to you directly, which is probably more effective and more reliable. But in that pack, we have an appeal. We have a draft appeal which you can use, so you can just read it out as it is, and it has got a recent case study in it, and it is so we will also put it on the website in due course. So I think if you Sheila, will try and remember to make a note of your name and send it to you directly. But if you also reach out to us, we'll make sure that you get a copy as well. And sounds like you're kindly volunteering to either do it or to make sure it's done. So that would be great. Thank you. Tim, if I could also make a couple of suggestions. If there aren't many questions, I've got two suggestions. Questions are great, but if we don't get many, one is we've got Joe on the line. So you know, we've heard Geraldo's side of the story on his hospitalization, but Joe was the one who looked after him. So I don't know if Joe, or we'd like to invite Joe to give his thoughts on you know, his side of the story. And then the other thing is, we could, if Sarah's got it, we could run the sailing pilgrimage video, which is 6 minutes long, just showing what the sailing pilgrimage. This time last year we were sort of thinking, we were in an early stage of the sailing pilgrimage, but that has now happened. That was very successful. So if you wanted, we could show that. Just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go for. Okay. So we've got a couple of things coming up. First of all, Duncan is asked a question about the Ring of Prayer. So I'm going to ask you to talk about the Ring of Prayer in a minute, Adrian, and then. But before that, let's just hear from Deacon Joe. Joe, you got 2 minutes max to talk about your experience with Geraldo and the support that you and your team provided.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Good evening, everyone. Just a quick overview of Geraldo. Working with Geraldo was quite touching, as I'm sure most of the people we worked with was quite touching, on learning of his own humility, how grateful he was to Stella Maris and its supporters. Geraldo started a journey where he was told there was no hope. He was going back home to die. That was his own words. So with the help of Stella Maris and people who are here tonight and people all over the UK, the supporters, Geraldo was able to go on a journey through medical support. Tim talked about the Centenary Emergency Fund. Also, Tim, just to note that fund paid for his rent too for a particular time. And the reason for that was the flat was next door to the hospital where he was getting his cancer treatment. So it made him be able to live on his own, because the only offer he had from his own close fishing friends was to live in a caravan. So he was very grateful to get the flat and to get the sterile flat to live on his own. So Geraldo, for me, it's a great story to hear him talking about the Stella Maris family. And we will continue to support Geraldo. We still keep in contact with him. But I think the most important thing about Geraldo's story is that from where he thought he was going to be, he's in a better place. He's recovering with his family back home, and his consultant says that he should make a full recovery. And to me, that's an amazing story in its own. Thank you, Tim.
So, hey, thanks, Joe. And whilst I've got you on the line, I'm going to put you under pressure here. Would you like to talk to us about that lovely couple who died very recently and in very short space of time? And who were they? And what was their generosity and kindness and support to Stella Maris?
Yeah, okay. Yes, well, as some people will know, the couple that died was Einar and Ian Bruce. And Ian was a sailor. He was at sea for 41 years. And Einar was also involved. She was on the ships alongside him. And it made her decide that she wanted to support sailors when she came off land to have her family. And the very first place she actually started was Stella Maris. in Glasgow. And along with her family, they would go there quite often to support Father Ambrose. And they would serve meals. They would raise charity nights. They would have first supper nights for them. And over the last few years, I got to know Ina, who represented Watch Ashore, supporting seafarers' families when they were lonely at home. And they supported Stella Maris by backpacking at Christmas, Easter. We had cadet nights together. Both husband and wife came, and they were just such a lovely couple and so dedicated to supporting seafarers. You know, it was in their blood. You know, from the very first minute Ian went to become a cadet, to become a chief officer on the ships, and Ina too was on the ships with him. So she understands the mechanics of the seafarers and the importance and the needs of them. So she would always come to the centre in Grangemouth, in Glasgow, in the college to support seafarers. And sadly, they passed away within 2 weeks of one another. But their memory will live on, and their family have already says that they want to help volunteer and support Stella Maris. So I think, you know, that's a credit to Ina and Ian, the example they showed to their family and to the seafarers.
Hey, thanks, Joe. So, Adrian, back to you to give us a little update. And what is the Ring of Prayer all about?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I mentioned the sailing pilgrimage. That's this activity that was done last year. Russ Fairman kindly sailed around the whole of the UK, raising awareness for us and celebrating our centenary. But as part, and that was an amazing accomplishment. And if you've got the annual review that Tim mentioned, there's a double-page spread on that in there. So I won't say any more, although with time maybe we can show the video on this. But anyway, that was an amazing enterprise. But out of it, we felt called to do a ring of prayer around the UK this year. So following the same route, essentially, and it's a prayer relay by churches where different churches are each praying for a week, principally rosary-based prayer, and praying for, on a Monday, seafarers, a Tuesday, fishers, Wednesday's families of fishers, Thursday, Stella Maris, chaplains and volunteers and staff, and Friday, ocean environment. So this relay is going around the country, more or less following the same route. So we're in week 4 at the moment. We started it with a week for our central team, and then we had 2 weeks in different parish clusters in Southampton, and then we've gone inland to Kingston this week. It'll be in Dover next week, Gravesend the week after, inland again in Banstead, and then Harwich and Ipswich, and then we're taking a break over the summer and starting again in September in Walsingham and waking our way up the rest of the east coast and over the top of Scotland and down the west coast, Northern Ireland, Wales, and back around the south coast and Portsmouth. So if you'd like your parish to get involved in that, you're very welcome. And any parish anywhere is welcome. Doesn't have to be on the coast, inland. So if you want more information on that, again, contact the office. The numbers have kindly been put in the chat. We can send you, we've got a leaflet on that as well. We can send you details if you want to get involved. Love to have you.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. So we do have a question, and this is from Mary Collins. Good afternoon, Mary Collins, who says, I'm a regular donor joining you from Cape Cod, USA. So I reckon it's afternoon. I learned about you from being at a Seafarers Mass while in England a number of years ago. What else can I do to support you beyond donations? Well, that's a really, really good question. I think what you can do is, if you wanted to become a volunteer or wanted to join our Stella Maris network in the USA, then you need to reach out to the Apostleship of the Sea USA, Paul Rosenblum and his team there, and we can provide you with any information or contact details as you require. So that's if you wanted to roll up your sleeves and get involved in the practical business of ship visiting and supporting directly seafarers and fishers in Cape Cod and your part of the USA. The second thing you can do is just highlight the awareness of the fantastic work that our seafarers and fishers do. 95% of everything is moved globally around the world by the seafaring trade. And to coin a Scottish expression, without any fishers, there would be no fish suppers, i.e. fish and chips, or fish served in our supermarkets and in our restaurants. So highlight the important work that they do. Raise that in your church so that prayers can be said for seafarers, fishers and their families. And of course, continue to support with your donations. But it doesn't have to come to us. It could go to the Apostleship at the Sea and your local organisation there in the USA. So I hope, Mary, that answers your question. I said I was going to be brave, and because I know people don't like typing questions, but I am going to open it to the floor. If you look down at the bottom, that way, Tim, down there, you'll see a thing called reactions. If you want to click on reactions and raise your hand, hopefully you'll flag up to us and you can ask a verbal question. So we'll see what happens in the next 30 seconds. If not, I reckon we might have to conclude and say good night and farewell. So I'm checking my Q&A button. None visible. I'm checking the chat. None visible too. And finally, I can't.
Mary has her hand up, so I've
Oh,
given
good.
her
Thank
her
you.
microphone.
Yes, thank you. Good spot. Mary Collins, over to you, Mum.
Just to say thank you so much for that response to my question, and I would absolutely love to get in touch with Apostleship of the Sea, and I will do that because it does concern me. There are various, I see large ships and so on of this sort of oil variety and so on that dock at Cape Cod. And it has occurred to me to wonder, I'm a Eucharistic minister, for example, at the local Catholic church. So I wonder if, perhaps I could take communion, whatever. But I shall continue to prefer to send my donations to you if you don't mind. So anyway, but thank you. I'm just so thrilled to be connected at all to what you do. I'm just so grateful that you're there. Sending the money is the easy part, but thank you for all you do.
Well, Mary, thank you for those lovely words of support and encouragement. And you know what, you're absolutely right about reaching out in any being a volunteer ship visitor in any shape or form. And I don't know the American setup desperately well, but if somebody in this country said, I would like to be a volunteer ship visitor, we would do our level best to support them, to provide them with a training, and it doesn't have to be much. It could just be, as you say, taking communion on board, or just chatting to seafarers in the local seafarers centre. There doesn't have to be a Stella Maris or Apostleship of the Sea presence. You can create your own presence. It's lovely to hear a Brit accent coming from the USA, and thank you for your continued support. And I wish you the very best. Make sure you get back to us. Let us know how you're getting on. info@stellamarismail.org is our email address, which I monitor along with the rest of the team. So keep us updated and let us know if we need to provide any assistance. And the point you made at the very end there is, it is truly one global global Stella Maris family that we're all a part of. And funds that come into us, we dispense not just to our beneficiaries here in the UK, but you've heard about our international global program as well. And I think, and I will share this with you, we are, as a Stella Maris organisation, Standfast Americans and North Americans, we're pretty strong. And so I think we are in a very unique position, maybe slightly outside the Catholic Church, because we're an agency of the Catholic Church. So we're not solely dependent on diocesan funding, although we are very, very grateful for the work that our parish contacts do to generate that support at Sea Sunday, which we couldn't do without. But we are in a financially privileged position where we can help support other organisations, not in a sort of white knight in shining armour crusader riding through the waves to support the rest of the world, but in a humble and sense of belonging and commitment and spirit of helping out others, I think, is where we're coming from. But lovely question, Mary. Thank you for asking. Any more for any more? 23:53. Right. No. I'm going to conclude by saying thank you all for attending on a late Monday. There's my thumb. Thank you for attending. Thank you for Sarah and the rest of the team, the home team, Esteban, and the home team for being a part of this wonderful webinar. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for your continued support. If I'm allowed one shout out, Adrian's talked about Sea Sunday, talked about getting involved in the Ring of Prayer, and that's we need to develop and continue to sustain the charity, and that's by engaging with the youth, engaging with youngsters. I'm going to be slightly tongue in cheek. There's lots of grey hair. Somebody in the office today said, "Tim, are you getting grey since you've been in Stella Maris? You're 1 year." I said, "No, I think I've always been grey." I missed an opportunity leaving the army to dye my hair so that everybody thought, well, he's got dark hair. But I say tongue in cheek that anybody under the state pension retirement age, under the age of 67, no, we just need to encourage people to join, whether they are an 18-year-old, young intern, or a young volunteership visitor, or a young parish contact, all the way through to we'll take them to any age you want. Anybody can be a part of this organisation. But I do ask as a shout out for people to look out for the next generation. Who do I need to? We want you to become a part of our global Mara Stella families. You've got the right values and standards that we would like to have you as part of our family. So that's my one shout out, if I'm allowed a shout out. Good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us. And I will see you before, but look forward to seeing you again this time next year. Good night, everybody.